Hi and welcome back to the channel. It's been a couple of weeks now since I've came back from the Tour du Mont Blanc and I've gathered all my thoughts on all the equipment that I use out there, how it performs, so I'm going to go through everything. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, it all helps the channel out. So my trip to Mont Blanc was 7 days on the trail, fully wild camping and a few campsites as well. So we're going to go through all the kit that I used, put them into different categories. I've got kit that I used and worked really well. I've got things that didn't work really well, and I've also got things that I didn't use for various reasons. At the end, I've also got things that I didn't end up taking, which I plan to take on the trail. So first, we're going to look at the things that I used and worked really well on the trail. So the first thing I'm going to look at is the rucksack that I took out on the trail. It is my 58 litre Exos from Osprey. This rucksack performed brilliantly out on the trail. I had never worn this once until I went out on the trail. I put it on my back, got it sized, and that was pretty much it. So fresh from the box, straight out on the trail. You should really break in your rucksacks, but to fully test and see how good it was, I wanted to see what it was like straight out of the box. This rucksack carried everything I needed. It had plenty of space from the side mesh pocket at the front, decent capacity, and I still had plenty of space in here, even though I was carrying a few extra things like my drone and a few other items for filming as well. The back suspension worked really well, and with the hip belt transferring all the way down to my hips, worked really well. Decent shoulder pads as well, and when I'd originally sized this, I had lots of kit in it, but it wasn't overly heavy. So when I was out on trail, much heavier kit, I did need to adjust it on the trail as it was sitting too low on me. From simply taking it off, adjusting the straps here at the back, I was back on the trail within less than a minute. So overall, great rucksack, and unless something better comes out, this is going to be the one that I take on the Pacific Crest Trail with me. The next item of kit that worked brilliantly was my sleeping bag. This is the Sierra Design Backcountry Bed. It's a 20-degree down sleeping bag. Never been cold in this. This worked brilliantly out on the trail, and it packs down to a decent size. So this performed really well. I have used this on shorter trips, but this is the first time I had it over a full 7 days. Not a single issue with the backcountry bed. Another bit of kit I had was my very light pad from Gossamer Gear. I got this again from Garage Grown Gear. Very, very light. I was able to fold it up, use it as a sit pad, and I was able to have it under my main sleeping pad as well. There was one of the nights where I had to pitch on ground that wasn't brilliant. There was a lot of stones, sharp stones that were underneath the tent, so potentially they could have burst through. So this was able to protect my sleeping pad from that. I was also bringing it out every time I sat down as well. The ground wasn't always dry, so I was able to get this out, sit down, and it was nice and comfy. Even when I got to the Refusios, when there was park benches and stuff, I still got this out. Sitting on it, kneeling on it, whatever I need to do, this was brilliant. It weighs virtually nothing. So this is probably the best bit of kit I had for the entire trail. Most versatile, used the most, and also protected my vital kit, i.e. my sleeping pad as well. As for my cook kit, it all performed brilliantly. From my titanium stove, which I've used many times in the hills, brilliant bit of kit. I like the low profile of it. Especially the first night I had and the first morning, it was a bit bleak, so I actually was able to cook in my tent. Because this is such a low profile, I can do that. I can cook in the vestibule of the tent. Yes, I know it's not recommended, but with a smaller profile stove, it's much easier than one that sits a lot higher. I also had my fire maple pot as well with the heat exchangers and my cozy as well. This cozy came in brilliantly. It helped me save a lot of fuel as well. I was able to bring the water to boil. Once that was done, throw my noodles in, put it straight into the cozy, shut the lid, and let it do its thing. Within about 5 minutes, the food was ready to eat, and I'd saved myself so much fuel. So if you are going to use stoves like this, I would highly recommend either getting a cozy or making one yourself out of insulating material. With the pot cozy as well, I also had this smaller one for my hydrated meals. This worked really well. The only issue was that it wasn't quite wide enough. So when I put the hydration pack in here, poured the water in, down the bottom, it wasn't quite softened up. It was still a bit crunchy because the water wasn't getting to it. Just because this just wasn't as wide as it needed to be. So I will be making another one However, this still did its job, it just needed to be that bit bigger. I would highly recommend making a little cozy for them so you can put them in, leave them to the side and let the water do its thing. I also had my Sea to Summit pop-out mug, which predominantly was for tea, and also had my titanium spork as well, which came in handy. As I said, the cook system worked really well. I ended up only taking one of the small gas bottles with me, and that lasted me the full 7 days, and also the next again morning when I was on a campsite as well, and it still had gas in it for me to drop into a hiker's box in the campsite I was in. So you don't need to take a lot of gas, especially if you're going to use things like cozies and stuff to help you save gas. Saves the weight. I didn't have to carry anything big. One gas bottle was more than enough, and considering I was having tea in the morning, I was cooking sometimes at lunchtime on the trail, and I was also cooking dinners on the trail as well. So it just shows you don't need to take a lot of gas out on the trail. If you do need to top up, again, there's a few towns that you can get resupplied in. There's quite a few camping shops scattered about the place. If you want, I can do a separate video on just the cook kit as well, to go into more detail of how it performed and everything I've got within my cook kit and my pot cozy as well. So what we're going to look at now is my hygiene kit, my poop kit and my med kit. All these get used throughout the entire trail. When you're out on the trail, it's very important to clean yourself, maintain hygiene, so everything did get used, from the soap, the toothpaste tablets, everything. Not only was the soap used for cleaning myself, I used it to clean my clothes out on the trail as well. I ended up not showering on the trail to try and get ready for the Pacific Crest Trail, because you tend not to shower as much as you would on trails like the Tour du Mont Blanc. So the big towel I took, yes, it's not that big, but I could have done without it. I could have just took my smaller face one to dry myself. So this was a little bit excessive for what I was doing. Talcum powder as well came in really handy just to dry myself off, especially when I'd spent all day sweating as well. Wash myself down and then using that to help dry myself. So that also came in really handy. Toothpaste tablets were also really good as well to help save the weight. They just didn't taste very nice when you're starting to crunch them until they started turning to toothpaste. But overall, they still did their job. They still worked really well. And I just had to get past the whole crunching them till they turned into the toothpaste. There are toilets out on the trail. You've got the refugios, you've got things like that. So I never really needed to pull out my trowel like I will on the Pacific Crest Trail. However, I did end up using my backpack BD, as you see in one of the videos. You don't see me using it, but I do talk about using it. So I was able to give myself a freshen up, wash myself off and test it out and see how good it was. This worked really well for the very first time using it. Brilliant. And if you are going to do a lot of backpacking, this is a good thing to get into. It saves you having to use lots of toilet paper. You can clean yourself out properly. Then you're not going to get any chafing, rubbing, infections, horrible stuff happening down there. This is definitely a good buy. I got this from Garage Grown Gear. Again, I'll put the links for everything I'm using in the description so you can click on it and find out what it's like. Next we have my med kit. I didn't intend to use any of this. You should always take a med kit regardless of what you're doing. In here just has some plasters, small bandage, extra calisthenic tape for my knees, and my lip balm. Lip balm got used heavily out the trail because it was quite hot and I was getting a lot of chafing on my lips. I did have to use the med kit. I think it was day 2 when I was trying to do a hand grab on my drone. Mistimed it. The rotors caught me a little bit and I did cut my 2 fingers. They were only capillary bleeds. It wasn't anything major, but there was still quite a bit of blood, so I had to patch myself up. So the med kit came in quite handy for that. Sunscreen. It was really hot, as you can see the videos when I did it. A lot of sun, so this was used on my legs predominantly. The rest of them was covered up, but the areas that weren't were my legs. So sunscreen worked out really well. I also took with me this cloth that I also got from Garage Grown Gear. This is used more for if you go to the toilet to kind of clean yourself up down there. It has antibacterial in the material, so when you hang it from your rucksack, it heats up and then it cleans the pad. But it's very absorbent, so I actually use this predominantly for wiping down the condensation in my tent. Not overly big, worked really well, absorbed all the water, squeezed it out and then continued to wipe. So this was actually really handy for getting rid of the condensation on my tent. I also took with me this small 500ml water bottle, squeezy one, and I also had these tablets as well to help with rehydrating myself and get my electrolytes back up. Day 1, I used this an awful lot and I felt I needed to use it an awful lot. But as time went on, I used it less and less and less. The idea was I was going to get to all the different water sources, fill this up, drink it, have one of the tablets in it, and move on. But as I got used to the trail, used to the heat, I didn't need to do it as many times as I thought. But still a great thing, doesn't weigh a lot, didn't take up a lot of space. It literally sat in the side pouch of my rucksack, so it was always at hand with a couple of tablets as well. So if you are going to do a lot of walks in the heat and you're going to lose your electrolytes through sweat, it's always good to have some of these so you can stop, fill it up and keep going. So didn't get used as much as I thought, but it still get used and it's still something I'm going to take on my next trails as well. When it came to hydration, I had this hydration hose which fits onto a water bottle. This is again from Garage Grown Gear. The idea is great. The only problem was it doesn't fit perfectly on the British Smart water bottle, so it was not the best fit. It still performed really well, it just meant I had to take care when I was putting it in my pouch so it wasn't getting squeezed and the water wasn't pouring out. But this did work brilliantly. It meant I was able to access my water whenever I needed to, and I was able to see how much I had left and I was able to fill it up really, really easily. So between this and my other water bottle, I had no major issues with remaining hydrated. I also had my Sawyer Mini if I had to get any water out of streams, and I also had my bag to collect that water as well. So all these worked really well. As I said, the hydration hose would have worked better if I had a Smart water bottle from the States. Another thing I took in my rucksack was my beach shoes. These were there just to get ready for the Pacific Crest Trail for all the river crossings, but I was also going to wear them at the tents after my walk. I did wear them once I got to my final campsite after the trail, and it meant I could just get my boots off. So they did get used, just not on the trail. But again, didn't take up a lot of space. They're very light and they are good if you do have to do a river crossing. So they did work out quite well. And I'll probably take these on the Pacific Crest Trail rather than flip-flops or something a lot heavier. I also took this exercise ball, which is used for rubbing yourself down, try to get rid of knots in your shoulders and stuff to help with injuries and injury prevention. I did use it a handful of times and it was useful when I used it, but I think as I progressed on the trail, I needed it less and less and less. But it's not overly heavy, didn't take up a lot of space, and it did mean that if I did get a sore shoulder or sore legs, I could pull it out and use it. My head torch and the headlamp, they get used quite a lot, especially the tent. Sorting stuff out at night, try to do my videos, various other things. Head torch is always quite handy as well. The lantern is also bright. Not only does it keep the head torch protected from getting scratched and damaged, it also doubles up as the lantern, so that was able to just hang up in my tent and I was able to see exactly what I was doing. So good bit of kit. Now when it came to the tent, this is not the tent I'm going to take the Pacific Crest Trail. This was just a stand-in because I haven't decided. As I said in my video when I was talking about my kit getting ready for the trip, this is a very heavy tent. It's 2 kilograms, it's a lot heavier than I wanted, but it's just a stand-in until I found one I liked. It still performed very well, it's still easy to set it up, I could pitch it anywhere I wanted, so overall it did work, it's just too heavy. Along with that, I had my MSR groundhog stakes in my Dyneema bag. They worked out brilliantly, especially on my last night when I was having to pitch into the hard stone gravel kind of terrain. These went right in. So if you're looking for a decent set of really strong, robust pegs, these are the ones you want. The groundhog stakes are brilliant at getting in and holding your tent in place. Never had an issue pitching them. I will be doing a separate video on the clothing that I wore on the trail, but I'm going to talk about a little bit of clothing that I took with me on the trail. This was my Rab windstopper. Now it wasn't really cold out there, but there's a handful of times that I actually put this on. In the mornings, quite chilly, but not enough to put a down jacket on, so I had this on. Same at night time, I had this on as well. As soon as I got to camp, put this on, and it kept me nice and warm. So the Rab windstopper came in really handy on the trail. It's really worn in the mornings, taken off when I started walking, and then put on when I got to camp. So well worth taking this top. So that was all the gear that performed really well on the trail. What we're going to go through next is the stuff that I didn't actually use, and I'll go through the reasons why I didn't use them, and I'll go through whether I think that it was worth taking on the trail or it wasn't. So let's have a look at the kit that I didn't end up using out on the trail. First thing I'm going to look at is the Tour du Mont Blanc map. I also had a map cover with this and a compass. Now, I will always take a paper map, I don't care. This didn't get used primarily because I was testing out the Far Out app on my phone, which performed brilliantly when it came to navigation. This was always there as a backup, and if the phone ever went down, I could pull this out. There is trails that I will predominantly use the map to save power on the phone, but I wanted to test the phone and the Far Out app to its capacity to see how it performed. So yes, this never got used, but it's still a brilliant bit of kit, and I would never not take a map with me. Next item that never got used was my Gore-Tex socks. As you saw, day one was a bit bleak, but it wasn't enough to force me to put my Gore-Tex socks on. But that could have changed. The weather could have been horrible the whole way through, and my boots could have been soaked all the way through. So yes, I didn't use them, but I would still definitely take them on trails like that, because you never know, you're in the mountains, the weather could change. So Gore-Tex socks, despite not being used, will still get taken on my next trail. The next item of kit that never got used was my sleeping top. I generally slept in my sun hoodie. It wasn't overly cold at night. My sleeping bag is brilliant, so it kept me nice and warm. However, the temperature could have changed when I was out there, especially when I was at much higher altitudes, especially my last night. I think it was above 9,000 feet, so it could have easily changed. So my Helly Hansen sleeping top, still very light, packs down. I will still take this as a sleep top, despite the fact that I never used it on that trail. I more likely will use it on the next trail. Because the weather was so good out in Mont Blanc, I was blessed, I was very, very lucky with the weather, so I never ended up using any of my warm kit, whether it was my thicker North Face gloves, my thinner contact gloves, hell, even my waterproof mittens from Decathlon never need to get used as well. Not even my buff got used, or my small beanie hat either. I would still take these with me. Despite not being used on this trip, doesn't mean that the weather couldn't have turned on me. So yes, never got used, a lot of different items. Together they're not overly that heavy, and they're worth taking. If you're out there and it's beautiful weather and you think, nah, I'm not going to take my gloves, I'm not going to take my hat, I'm not going to take any of that stuff. It all changes. You're out on a trail that's going to take multiple hours to get back to somewhere where it's nice and warm. These are a lifesaver. So yes, never get used on my trip, but it doesn't mean the next one they're not going to get used. So all these items will get used at some point. So I'd never not take warm kit. Along with that, my down jacket also never got used. Well, I say that, but even the gloves, the hat, and the down jacket never actually got put on, but I did use them in their waterproof bag as a secondary pillow. So that worked out really well. The pillow that I had was good enough, but I like a little bit more comfort. So I was able to put them underneath my pillow and give myself that little bit extra comfort. So yes, they never get used for what they were intended to be used for, but I still used them out on the trail. So the last bit of kit that never got used was my wet kit. Well, my Gore-Tex jacket was put on the morning of the trip as I was heading on the bus, because it was massive downpour. But once I got to the start line, it subsided, so I was able to put my Gore-Tex jacket away. So it just shows how the weather can change. So despite not needing my jacket, not needing my bottoms, again, I'm still not going to leave them behind. The weather could have easily changed, as I've mentioned, when it comes to the warm kit. So don't take that chance. If you want to go something light, I mean, these are quite heavy. You know, I could have got things like frog togs or something much more lightweight, but I didn't want to just waste money and get something else. I took what I had, and I took what I knew worked, especially if the weather closed in on me. I've had these out in some bleak conditions, so I knew they would protect me from the elements. So just because they never get used doesn't mean I'm not going to take them next time. Along with my wet kit, I also had my small gaiters. They never got used either, but again, they're still nice and lightweight. They didn't take up too much space, and they didn't take up too much weight. So again, the weather could have turned on me. So again, depending on where I'm going will depend if I take these with me. I also took with me this bandana as well to capture sweat and to help cool myself down. Again, this didn't end up getting used at all. When it came to helping cool myself down, I was able to put my hat in the river, wet that, and then put it on my head, so that worked and it came to catching sweat, I simply just used my sun gloves to wipe the sweat off my brow. So this never got used. Would I take it again? Probably. For a much prolonged trail, I might want to use this for drying myself down, cleaning my pots. There's lots of uses for a bandana. I could use this to place on the dirty ground, lay things on it, so there's still quite a lot of uses. Just because I didn't use it in this trail doesn't mean I'm not going to use it on the next. Another item I didn't use was my sunglasses. The sunglasses case I did because it was protecting the sunglasses, but I never actually used my sunglasses. I didn't feel the need to. My hat was able to protect me, and as I was walking, my head was mostly down, keep an eye on the trail. It was only up to look at the views, and even then, the sun never got my eyes. Still a handy thing to take, as again, for a trail like that, very sunny, they could have come in handy, I didn't feel the need to put them on. But still something worth taking, and it also kept my main glasses protected in the case. So the case worked really well, just didn't need to put the glasses on. Piece of emergency equipment that I took with me that thankfully I didn't need was my dog tag with my emergency contact details, and also this little container that had some spare money. This did come in really handy. It meant I had 50 euros separated from the money that was carrying on me, so if I did lose that, then I had the spare. Also meant that I knew I had at least 50 euros left, so as the money was running out, if I couldn't afford anything, I had 50 euros in here as a backup. So yes, one part never got used, but the other part did. And last but not least, my Scottish flag. Still carry it everywhere. Didn't get it out for any reason. I don't feel the need to, but it's a nice reminder of home to keep my rucksack. So yes, I will be taking this with me again. Right, let's go through the items that didn't quite perform as well as I hoped. Everything that I used performed brilliantly apart from one thing, and it was my Sea Summit ultra light sleeping pad. I've used this on many occasions up in the Munros. I've never had an issue with it when it came to comfort, but I was only out for a weekend. I did notice after about day 4 that I was very sore on my sides, whether it was my hips and my shoulder, because I'm generally a side sleeper. So this was not performing brilliantly over a prolonged period of time. So I'm going to have to start looking at what I'm going to do to fix that, whether I'm going to go to a different pad or whether I simply had it overinflated and it just wasn't comfortable because of that and I needed to let out a little bit of air. But it's not the thickest pad, so I might be looking at getting something else. So out of everything I had, for only one thing not to really work the way I wanted it to, I think overall my kit is quite good, and I will be doing a bit more dialing in before I go to the Pacific Crest Trail and maybe improving a little bits and bobs, changing a few little bits but not much. Predominantly what I've got is what I'm going to take. And when it comes to new sleeping pads, I've got a few ideas I'm already looking at, but if you've got any suggestions for a really good sleeping pad for using over a prolonged period of time, please put in the comments so I can have a look and it'll give me a better idea of what I'm going to go with. But yeah, the Sea Summit works really well over weekends. Just over a prolonged period of time, this started to fail on me, just on the comfort factor. For ease of inflation, for the size, for the weight, yes, it's brilliant, but if you can't have a comfy sleep, it's not good, is it? So I will be looking at a replacement. As I said at the start, I was also going to go through some of the items of kit that I was planning to take that I never ended up taking on the trail for one reason or another. When I was packing my kit on the night before, it was a bit heavy and I wanted to try and shave some weight as much as I can. So I had to be really, really harsh with what I was taking. Overall, there was nothing I could get rid of apart from a few things. And the biggest one was, sadly, my guidebook. I had a map and I had my Far Out app, and I'm dyslexic, so when it comes to reading, I'm not the best. So this is a great guidebook. It was just something that I was more than likely not going to use out in the trail just because of the extra things that I had. So this is quite a wee bit of weight, so I decided to ditch this as well. Very sad. I was wanting to use it out in the trail, but I just needed to get rid of some of the weight as well, so this book had to go. The only other item that I didn't end up taking was my Canon camera, which I'm filming on right now. I will talk more on why I didn't take my Canon camera with me when I do my video on my electro equipment, when I break down them and tell you how they performed, if they perform well, especially my solar panel as well. So those were the only two items I ended up ditching at the last minute. Everything else that I took with me, that I went through in the video on this one and my packing video from Mont Blanc, I took on the trail. If you like this video, then look forward to my next one where I actually go through the clothing that I wore on the trail and how I felt it performed on the actual walk itself, especially over a prolonged period of time like 7 days. And I hope you've enjoyed seeing the breakdown of how my kit performed, and if it gives you any ideas of what you might want to take as well. A lot of this kit isn't your high-end stuff, so if you are someone who is on a budget, this could be something that you might want to get. So as I said, I'll put all the links in the description of all the bits of kit that I've got as well. Please like, share and subscribe, and we'll see you on our next adventure.